Hey everyone, George here and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk a little bit about something that I've had several comments about over the last couple of weeks and months, and it seems to be a recurring theme of questions about the clarity of my water and how I keep it that way. And the secret really is that I do that by doing a lot of water changes. I've talked about this several times. Actually, I probably talk about it almost every video, that doing a quarter water change a week, and the last week of the month I do a 50% water change in every tank that I have. But doing that quarter water change a week really does go a long ways towards keeping the water in your tank really high quality. Now, it is not everything. There is much more to keeping ammonia, nitrites, nitrates, all the things that can damage your fish's gills and stress their bodies out. There's more to it than just the water changes. But if you are doing regular water changes and you are keeping up on that, there's a good chance that your water quality on a well-cycled tank is probably in pretty good shape. Other indicators would be obviously how clean your tank is on the inside as far as algae. And I'm talking specifically about diatom algae, which is the brown algae that gets on a lot of the rocks, leaves, and substrate of your tank. That is typically something that happens soon after a cycle and will go away over a period of time if you are maintaining your tank correctly, and you also have some good algae eater type fish in there, such as Autosynclus, some Siamese algae eaters, and even Corydoras. Corydoras will eat certain types of algae. In fact, some types of killifish will actually consume small pieces of algae and help keep up on the cleanliness of your tank and the algae that might be growing around your tank that you don't really think about. So there are so many things, and the other main component is feeding or overfeeding. If you are feeding your fish correctly and you are not overfeeding them, typically the organics in your water will be consumed by the plants that you have in there, which is going to lead me into another segment about how you can get some natural filtration through plants. But getting back to the food aspect of it, you do need to make sure that you're not overfeeding your fish. A lot of people do this and they pollute their tanks, and they don't realize that their fish do not need near as much food as they may think they do. And a good indicator is pretty much the rule that everybody follows: whatever your fish can consume within 3 minutes, and there isn't extra food laying around, typically you're doing the right thing. But now, how many times a day you feed your fish can also be important. Many people think that their fish, because they beg all the time, need to be fed. Fish will continuously ask for food if you get in the habit of going near the tank, and every time you go near the tank you feed them. They're going to get the idea. It's like Pavlov's dog. They're going to get the idea that you are getting ready to feed them again. So don't feed them just because they have an appearance that they're wanting or needing food. They're not needing food. Typically, fish will eat until they actually can make themselves really sick. And we see this when we see fish with bloat and those kinds of things. Those are usually, not always, but they're usually a good indication that you have been overfeeding your fish and you're not doing them any favors. This can affect their organs. It can affect their bladder that is used to keep the fish in a good swimming condition. And it does have a lot of consequences of overfeeding. So you just have to be extremely careful about that and make sure that you are not overfeeding. Now, doing a test on your water is not something that I'm going to tell you you absolutely have to do a couple of times a month or whatever, but I do recommend that if you are not sure about your tank's water quality, that you do buy a good test kit that will give you at least the basics about your water: the ammonia, the nitrites, the nitrates, the pH, the higher pHs, and so forth. Those are all things that I would suggest that if you are someone who is doing this, with 1 or 2 tanks, and it's not a full hobby for you, that you are just decorating your home with a fish tank, get yourself a kit that is a inexpensive kit but does the job. Actually, test strips can give you enough information to tell you where you're at with your water parameters, enough for someone to get by that is not wanting to spend $60, $70 on a really expensive high-end kit. You can usually do these things without spending a tremendous amount of money and get the same results. So I suggest that anyone who's unsure about the quality of their water, regardless of how well it looks, that you do periodically check those water parameters to make sure that they're in line and that you don't have something that is burning the gills and hurting the organs of your fish, as I said earlier. Now, I tend to put a lot of plants in my tanks, as you can see from the videos. I have always said the more you plant your tanks, the heavier you plant your tanks when you're first scaping it, the better off you're going to be, the better off your tank is going to be, because plants do act as a natural filtration system. And the more plants that you have, obviously, the more organics that are in your water are going to be consumed by those plants as a fertilizer of sorts and turn that into energy to grow the plants, which in turn put off oxygen, obviously, to help oxygenate your water. You typically don't need an air stone with a well-planted tank and a tank that has good flow in it. Now, I know different fish like different flows, so be careful that whatever tank you're putting together, that you're aware of the type of flow that those fish are going to require, and make sure that you understand that pretty well so that you can regulate that. But you do need to have good flow at the top of your tank so that you are getting that water to move across the top and pull oxygen in, and that is something that is just a good thing all the way around. So if you can do that, then I would tell you that you're well on your way to having good water quality in your aquarium. Now, we're going to talk about food a little bit more because not every food is equal to the other. There are different kinds of foods out there that we can buy for our tanks that are better quality than others. I'm not a real advocate for buying just flake food and using just the flake foods to make use of the food being cheap or inexpensive, I should say, just to feed my fish. I think that if you want to get the best color out of your fish and you want to extend their lives, it is so important that you try to buy some quality foods that these fish can consume that are going to be beneficial to the nutrition of their bodies and to bring out the best color in them, to make their organs strong. And it's just really, really important that we understand that. And it's also important that we understand that the types of food that you get can create an environment where your water quality is either good or bad. A lot of really cheap foods tend to get soggy and don't hold together very well long enough for the fish to consume them over time, and they just tend to pollute your water and raise your ammonia, which then in turn raises your nitrites, which in turn raises your nitrates, and it gets into a kind of vicious circle. So you want to be careful to make sure that you are buying quality food. Sometimes they're a little more expensive. In fact, they are more expensive. It's not sometimes, I shouldn't have said that, but they're always more expensive. But if you buy good quality food, it's going to go a long ways towards the health of your fish and also the quality of the water in your tank. So keep that in mind when you are buying foods, and understand that the quality of the food can make a huge difference as to the longevity of your fish's life, the quality of your water, and also not pollute your tank terribly by leaving behind a lot of organics that are going to create an environment for problems in your tank later on. So we're going to talk about food a little bit more as we get into this conversation, as far as what you should be looking for on the labels, some of the brands that are out there, and ones that I use that I feel confident that those foods are going to be foods that are relatively safe bets for you to purchase, that are not over the top expensive. And there's going to be some in here that are going to be probably more than you're going to want to spend money on, but I think a variety of foods for your fish is really important as well. So you don't have to go to the extent that I have regarding food, but water quality is directly related to the types of food that you feed, because of the way that they break down in the water and create an environment for your fish to either be sitting in water that is full of ammonia and nitrites and nitrates that can't break down fast enough. So here is some of the foods that I like to buy, and again, there's quite a few of them here, and you don't have to buy all of these. I just happen to get some of these because I talk about them a lot, and some of these companies send these to me, and others I just purchase because of some of the qualities of the food that I think are important. So you can see the different brands that I have up at the top here, and we're going to get back into this in a minute and really kind of look at the labels on here and go through some of the information that's on here that tells us about the quality of these foods, and how some of them even state very clearly that they are really easy on your tank as far as not creating situations where you have ammonia and stuff like that building up from their food. So it's important to really look for these things on the labels when you're buying your food, not only for just the nutrition factors, but also as to how they do in your water, how fast the pellets sink, if they're fast moving to get to the bottom for your bottom fish, or if they're slow moving sinking pellets that get to the mid-level where your fish like your tetras and other fish like that are in that mid-range of your tank are consuming them. Angelfish, you don't have to worry about them. They're like little garbage eaters, and they will eat just about anything. So let's take a look at this first one here. And as you can see, it says for clean, clear water, and it does prevent ammonia buildup. And that's really important because they put that on the label so that you will buy it knowing that as a good quality food, it's not going to cause a problem for your fish. Now the next one is bug bites, which does not make any claims about keeping your water clean, but it is a food that's small enough to where just about every fish in your tank can consume it pretty quickly and will not pollute your tank. And you can see that is a Canadian brand on there. It says right on the side there, and they've put a lot of thought into that particular food. So really important that they get that, because that's something that they would get in their natural habitat as well. And the next one over we're going to look at here in a second, and that would be the one that is the tropical pellets that I use basically for bottom feeding. And if you look at it again, they say that it is for clean, clear water and will not make ammonia. API makes these foods, and they're just really good quality. And again, the statement on there is that they're good foods for keeping your water clean. Now the next two I like a lot because they bring a lot of color to your fish. In other words, these are high quality foods that are full of proteins and nutrients and things like that, omegas. Fish oil is good for your fish. Now, it's good for us too when we eat fish, which is kind of a weird subject to be talking about when we're talking about fish tanks. But it's really important for us to understand that these omegas that are in these fish foods are actually really good quality foods for your fish and will help to keep them colored up really well. And it even tells you right on here, if you look at it, that these little mini pellets are obviously, it's showing you that it's for the color of your fish. In other words, it'll enhance the color of your fish. So that's really important. And I like to buy these simply because it has a lot of really good nutrients in here that are going to keep your fish really, really healthy. And so these two are probably the most important in my collection of fish foods because they're very specific about what they actually are achieving for your fish and the types of formulas that are made up to keep your fish in good shape. So again, these are a little bit more expensive, but I think it's worth spending the extra money on it if you have it, to keep these in your collection of foods so that you have them on hand to make sure that your fish are getting proper nutrition and you're getting, like I said, that color enhancement out of them that is so important to having your fish look and feel healthy. It's not just the look, but obviously to make them feel healthy. Now these last two, one of them says breeder food, and the reason why I like this one is not because I use it for breeder food, but because it's small enough to really be digested pretty easily by just about every fish in your tank. And I think it's important to see also that this one, clearly states that there are some properties to it to keeping your water clearer, and also that just because it's a smaller, and these are the two more expensive of the fish foods that I have in my collection of foods, and I just really like both of these. They're made by Sire, which is a good collection of foods out there for any kinds of fish. You can find it for just about any kind of fish out there. Now, as I said, this one says it's a breeder food. It's a slow sinking food. So, your fish that are in that top and middle section of your tank are going to probably benefit most from those. And the last one here are granules that are, they're not real fast sinking, but they are, ones that do go slowly enough to where, again, the middle and top fish are going to get them. But this also has a lot of nutrients in here that is fully loaded. It's probably the most well-rounded food of all of these. And again, almost every one of these foods do not pollute your tank terribly. They're very careful to make sure that they have created a food here that is not going to cause a lot of problems with your water parameters and that sort of thing. And again, when you're feeding, make sure you're feeding enough that your fish can consume within 3 minutes, and not something where you're getting a bunch of extra food falling to the bottom. Now, you do want some food to fall to the bottom because your cories and your bottom feeders, such as pistogrammas, they like to feed off the bottom. Some of that food needs to reach that so that your cories and your bottom feeders, your plecos, your culiloches, any of those kind of fish can find food down at the bottom. Now, last is these algae wafers. I love these. I had put these in earlier just before I did this video, so you saw a little bit of that little particles kind of floating around in the water, and basically that was what was left over from the small pieces that I broke up and put in there. That just guarantees that your algae eaters are getting the food that they need. But this is also a high protein wafer, which lots of your fish will benefit from. If you put these in your tank, you're going to find that most of your fish are really going to go after these. I don't care what fish they are in your tank, whether they're tetras, bottom feeders, just about rasporas, any of them are going to go down there and feed off these wafers because they are high in protein, and your fish do like a little bit of algae in their diet. Even though, most of these fish are not algae eaters per se, they certainly do benefit off eating some of these wafers because of the protein that's in them, and also small amounts of algae that help them to digest the food really well in their bodies. I just think a small amount of algae is kind of like us eating vegetables. We move food through our bodies a lot better without having a big stress on our digestive tract by having certain foods that help us to digest food better. So it's really important. So getting back to what I was saying about water clarity, just looking at your water does not guarantee that. Let's just go back over that again. That clear water is a good indicator that you're doing things right, but it is not 100% an indicator that you are doing everything that you need to keep your water clean. The only way you're going to know that for sure is doing those regular water changes, a quarter a week on your tank, and then 50% the last week of the month on all of your tanks, and really cleaning the walls down. And as I said, when you scape your tanks, make sure that things are far enough in to where you can get your hands around all the way, so that you can put a sponge in there with that rougher side of the sponge, so that you can clean that glass off and make sure that there is not algae growing on your glass. You can keep it nice and crystal clear and clean. And again, low iron glass does help. It's a little more expensive, but many of my tanks, in fact all of them, do. And if you notice around the top here where there's a little bit of buildup of calcification, stuff like that, if you just scrub that with a toothbrush every time you clean, it only takes a second, you're really going to be way better off in these chamber areas and around the lip of your tank and so forth. So I like to do that just about every time that I change water, because it only takes a second. Just keep a toothbrush on hand and do that, and you're just going to be way better off. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me today, and sorry about the fingerprints on the top here, and it's kind of nasty looking, but I was moving some things around just before I filmed this, and I'm sorry about that, but hopefully it's not horrible looking. But again, water clarity, really important in many ways for looking at your fish, but not always a good indicator that your tank is in perfect shape. So just be careful, follow the rules of cleaning that water up as best you can by doing those regular water changes, not overfeeding, testing your water periodically, keeping algae out of there, scrubbing the glass down for just a few minutes every time you do a water change. And man, I'll tell you, you can reduce the amount of heartache and anxiety that you might have about these maintenance issues if you do them pretty regular. Like I said, pick a particular day that you're going to do it and stick by it. So hit that like button, comment. Also, ring the bell at the top so it gives you any indication of new videos that are coming out, and share with your friends. So anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this was informational to you and you got something out of it, and we will see you on the next one. We got a lot of fun things coming up here that I will be on film for. I just wasn't really ready to get on film here today, but I hope you understand that, and we'll be doing some fun stuff here. That discus tank that I plan on doing is coming up here real soon. We should be starting to tear that down and rebuild it, and that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll start filming that over the next couple of days, and that film should be ready within a week or two. Anyways, thank you for joining me. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Until the next time, thank you, and we will see you again. And again, make sure you do clean around the top part of your tanks. As you can see, there's a little bit of film up around the top here, but that will simply go away as you clean your tank. That's not really calcification on there. It's just really water spots. And like I said, if you keep a toothbrush on hand, you can keep that off there and it will go away. I'm not going to make a big issue out of that, but I wanted to show you that one last time. And also make sure you understand that water flow, looking at the top of the tank here, is very important as well. It's a good indicator of how your water is moving across the top of your tank, and is good for your fish. But anyways, thank you so much for joining me. This has gotten to be kind of long, and I apologize for that. But take care, and we'll see you on the next one.